everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very, very excited to be joined by some fantastic professionals who are going to talk through some of the questions that you've come in along the themes of social communication and behaviour, which is very, very exciting. So I thought the first thing to do would be to introduce ourselves. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Leanne Henderson and I am a participation manager for Family Voice, and I am also a mum to 2 autistic daughters. So shall I go round and we can kind of go from there? So I'll go this way. So Jo, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Of course, yes. Hello, I'm Jo Neville and I'm one of the health visitors working in Children and Family Health Surrey, and I work in what they call the southwest quadrant, so sort of Guildford and Waverley area.
Thank you. And Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Trend. I'm the senior portage teacher across the whole 4 quadrants of the specialist early education service. We used to be called Portage Early Education. We still deliver portage, but we have a slightly wider offer now, hence the name change, and we deliver a program which is called Positive Play, and we also deliver a program that's called the Local Early Autism Program, which was something that was started in North West and now has continued across the county. So our remit is just a little bit wider. So that's why we're called SEEDS now. Okay.
Thank you. And Sally?
Hello, I'm Sally Rogers. I'm a speech and language therapist. I'm the professional lead of speech and language therapy for Children and Family Health Surrey. But also I've been working really closely with Family Voice. We're setting up a new team and doing a bit of transformation in the last year. I'm leading a team we're called Community Health Early Support, and we have early years health practitioners.
Thank you, Sally. And Lucy?
Hi there, thanks Leanne. So my name's Lucy Ross and I'm an early years speech and language therapist that works in southwest Surrey. Work assessing children and providing nurseries and parents with support and therapy. And I also work at the Royal Surrey as part of the multidisciplinary assessment team. So do quite a lot of assessments around children maybe presenting with potential autism spectrum disorder traits.
Brilliant. Well, as you can see, we've got a wealth of experience in here, so it's absolutely brilliant. So I think the best thing to do is to crack on with some questions that we've had come in from families, all related to these themes. So if you all want to just chip in, as and when, obviously some will apply more to your service than others. But it would be really, really great to get a kind of multi-professional view of things, because I think for families sometimes they sometimes go to one service, so sometimes it's really nice to see, hear it from different perspectives as well, which is great. So I'll start with the under social communication. So in terms of support and services, what are there to support families encountering problems that may be around social communication? So if a child was presenting with social communication difficulties, what kind of support can a family access?
So shall I start from the early years? So I think as health visitors, we work as part of the 0 to 19 team. So we work really closely with the 0 to 5-year-olds, and then also with the school nurses, so from 5 to 19. So we are the 0 to 19 service, and I guess we're sort of that entry level for those new mums with babies and toddlers. And I think really it's just really important to let parents know that there are lots of different ways of getting hold of us as health professionals, and we can move on. If we feel there's a problem, we can then refer onwards. So really the main way of getting hold of us is through the 0 to 19 advice line. That's open Monday to Friday, 8 till 5. And there are really experienced health visitors and nursery nurses who can often give lots of support and advice at that point, just during a telephone call. So that might allay any sort of, any fears or worries at that initial stage. And then I guess if if parents wanted a little bit more than that, or that health professional thought that they needed a little bit more support, then we have the Children and Family Health Surrey website, which has got lots of information on. I know that the others in this group will also signpost to that, because there's so much information, videos, parent pages, advice sheets, anything and everything about virtually everything to do with children. So it's worth exploring that. And then also, as health visitors, we are back now doing face-to-face clinics as well. So that's another thing that we can do is, you know, if you phone the advice line and you feel you need the extra support, you want to see somebody, we can book you into a clinic. And or allocate a health visitor and then do a home visit. So I suppose that's kind of the entry level. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that, or...
Yeah, certainly. So, Jo, thanks for that. And I think sometimes, obviously, health visitors refer into speech and language therapy in addition to a range of other professionals. So yeah, within speech and language therapy, our kind of universal offer, as Jo said, there is information on the Children and Family Health Surrey website. So there's advice sheets on there around social communication difficulties specifically, but also around kind of play, attention and listening, and other associated areas which may be beneficial for parents to look at as well. There's also the early years speech and language therapy resource pack on the website, which all parents and nurseries can access as well. It's a much more detailed document and has lots and lots of activity and advice sheets on it. So this is kind of a printed version of it here, but it's really quite a lengthy document that has loads of practical advice and ideas. Yeah. So it may be, they're all things that you can start doing with your children prior to them being seen by speech and language therapy. So it may be things around kind of basic turn taking games, things like kind of people play, increasing kind of tickle time or peekaboo games, depending on obviously on the child's needs, and just kind of reinforcing some of those really basic strategies. So the benefits of being down on the floor with your children, really tuning into how are they communicating with us at the moment. Are they doing that verbally, or are they doing that non-verbally? Really tuning into that, their use of gesture or any other means that they're using to communicate. Then kind of the benefits of just commenting on what they're doing alongside play. If they are using language, kind of modeling that language back to them, maybe expanding on what they're saying. So all those kind of basic strategies and sort of advice that you can kind of access prior to being seen by us. And obviously those bits of advice I gave are kind of general, but you can kind of use that pack to look through and kind of tailor the input to your child. All of the nurseries in Surrey should be really familiar with that pack as well. So the early years speech and language therapy resource pack. So if your child is in nursery, then you could kind of link him with the nursery as well, and they can kind of help navigate potential activities to kind of work on as well. At kind of more of a targeted level within speech and language therapy, obviously, if health visiting or paediatricians or parents refer into us, we would provide an assessment at that point, and then provide a report that has really specific kind of targets and strategies and activities. And I guess a big part of our role is really to kind of work with parents, work with nurseries, and really make sure that they're feeling really, really confident putting those strategies into place with the children, because it is really that kind of day-to-day input with the children that's really going to make the difference. Other support for children with social communication difficulties. We're part of kind of the multidisciplinary assessment team. So some of the parents may have heard of that. So sort of the MDA team, and all that really means is that it's kind of more than one professional assessing the child to really get a good idea as to what the child's strengths are, what their needs are, and what support can be put in place. So that tends to be with kind of paediatricians, speech and language therapists. At the Royal Surrey, I work with a clinical psychologist in that team as well. And And then if a child does go on to get a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, there's a number of kind of support groups that we refer parents onto. So again, Lisa's here from the C's team, so she can chat to us maybe a little bit about PAP-P course that they do, so the Parenting Autism Together course that they offer. There's also other courses in different quadrants. We run a parent course at the Royal Surrey post-diagnosis. And I guess a really key aspect of our role as a speech and language therapist is working kind of multi-professionally. So we work really closely with Joe's team, the health visiting team, but also Lisa's team, so the C's team, the specialist early education service team, as well as the SEND advisors team. I know there's lots of different teams here, but the SEND advisors team support nurseries to support children with additional needs, including social communication difficulties. And we work really, really closely with all of those teams to kind of make sure the child's sort of accessing the best support possible. And also linking in with the family centres as well. So for children with social communication difficulties, in my locality in Guildford, the family centres run a sort of sensory play session, which is really beneficial. So that's a weekly session that parents can access for children with additional needs, many of which sort of have social communication difficulties. So yeah, lots of different things. I'll pass on to Lisa to tell us a little bit more about what the C's team do. Or Sally.
I wonder if I could just mention, there's a bridge between our health visiting team and the speech and language therapy team, and the information that, so this is what Joe didn't mention. They do a check, and we really want parents to engage in these checks. The health visitors send them out. There's one that comes out about 10 months. I think it comes in the post, doesn't it, Joe?
It does.
We really look at the results, and we're looking to see if there's any early support we can put into families, if they're able to highlight any concerns they've got, and then another check happens at that 27 months. I know that there's a 2-year check that happens in nursery, so there's lots of checks going on. These are all opportunities where you can highlight concerns. You can highlight concerns in between the I'm in between a check, but I'm worried. But we really pay attention. This is a national assessment tool that's used to monitor children's development. And in my team that we've set up, we pay very close attention to how children are getting on at that 10-month check and the 27-month check with all areas of their development. But often it's one that is a good way of highlighting if there's any concerns that are sort of showing and early supporting for that.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, Sally. And I know you've had real success with you know, within the CHES team, and it's just, you know, so it's really lovely to hear, and it's so nice to hear you all talking about all the fantastic resources that are available. And actually, I was just listening to you, Lucy, and just having that resource pack. If as a new parent, just thinking back, just if you had those concerns, just being able to look at something and say, well, actually, I could do this, this, and this, and you know. And it gives you, because you don't know, is it, you often as a new mum, and you know, then you panic and everything like that. So actually having something like that is just brilliant. So yeah, no, I just want, it really struck me as a fantastic resource.
And can I just add as well that we do have a few parents ringing the advice line, as Sally said, in between the 10-month and the 27-month reviews, and we will always see you and talk about children's development if you're worried about it, but also to say if parents don't receive in the post anything around those times at 10 months and 20 months, you know, an offer to come to be for your child to be, you know, reviewed with their development, then give us a call and make sure that it hasn't been missed. So sometimes if you move house, we're not told about new addresses, etc. So just make sure that you're aware, that you tell us where you are, so that we can keep tabs on children and make sure that we see everybody.
Brilliant. No, that sounds great. Lisa, did you want to add
anything there? Really, thank you. And that really good, it follows on that I follow on from you guys, really, because I'm really reassured about the fact that that 10-month check is being pushed, because our service is really about early intervention. So really we see children, and a lot of our referrals are from health professionals, health visitors, speech and language therapy, paediatricians. So there's when concerns, and we have an open referral system, so parents can actually refer themselves in, but they wouldn't necessarily know of us without any explanation about who we were. So for parents, they could refer themselves in. But it's good to know that 10-month check, because it's getting in there early. I mean, we all know that 0 to 5 age range is, we never learn any more than the whole of our lifetime. And actually, to get to know that has an impact on our future learning, we want to just get them in there as quickly as possible. So our service is about predominantly helping families in the home. So it's about coming alongside families, and it isn't about us being the teacher or the solver of the problem. It's about journeying that family through where they might be at that point. And also, like we've all said, really, really passionate about multi-agency. So it's about us all singing from the same song sheet and putting an educational programme, really simple, small steps approach to helping those families just see the wood for the trees, almost, to see where is my child at this point, baseline, and what can I do in the home. But we also support settings as well to kind of marry those things together, and that's the impact of it, I think. And the whole, it isn't just us, I think it's the whole process working together. So yeah, that's our remit.
Brilliant. No, it's so interesting to hear about all the different things you do. It's absolutely brilliant. So I'm just thinking about, we've had some questions in about social communication and how it typically develops in the early years. So we've sort of talked about what they can do if they have concerns, but what kind of things should parents be, looking out for, and how would it typically develop?
Do you want me to start with that one? Yeah. Would that work? Yeah. Brilliant. So, I mean, we see children who have, like we've all talked about, have issues with their social communication, but social communication is such a wide brief. It also brings in social interaction. It's talking about how we actually engage and act and react to people around us, and it's learning how to be social. And it's almost something that grows rather than being taught. And if you're looking at a neurotypical child, then it starts from almost day one, when mum or principal carer is doing those face-to-face, sticking tongues out raspberries, facial expressions, and those children are with early reciprocities happening, where children are answering back. Now, the concerns would be, and probably some of our children, there's concerns right from very, very early on that they're not necessarily engaging in that reciprocity of language and facial changes and sticking tongues out. It's really, really early. So if there's concerns in that way, you might not necessarily get eye gaze or children watching to look at what's happening, or they might not be interested in what's happening around them socially. But it's also about interaction. It's about having those intimate times where there's time to almost chat to a child face to face. So that's what I would be concerned about, is right from fairly early on. And that, as we said about social communication, it grows with sounds, with words, with gestures, with your body change, body movements. So it's looking out for all those things, like reaching, pointing for things, commenting on what's around you. So it's all about language and communication and interaction, really married together. I don't know whether anyone, that's kind of a snapshot, but it's a huge area.
I think that's brilliant. I think it's giving children opportunities, isn't it? And yeah. I think particularly at the moment with the pandemic,
yes, it's made a massive difference, hasn't it? It really has.
And I think an example for me was I was running a clinic a couple of weeks ago, and we're still doing it quite safely. So unfortunately, we can't have just the drop-ins, but we have, usually two babies in a room at a time at a safe distance. And it's awful, but we're calling them the COVID babies, the babies that were born.
Yeah, I someone mentioned that yesterday.
And they haven't really had much social interaction. No. And we had one child that came in that mum hadn't been out due to her anxiety for COVID very much. And the child came in, there was already another little baby in the room that cried. And this child, his little face, because he hadn't really heard another baby cry. And it was amazing. And actually we take for granted, don't we, the everyday sounds and the talking in our environments, but actually a lot of babies at the moment haven't experienced what we would expect.
So actually, yes, we might have more children with those social communication and language issues because of that. Yeah, we've noticed that as well, that there's a lot more children struggling with those. It's those natural things that happen, isn't it, that you can't almost plan for.
No, that's so interesting, because that I hadn't actually even thought of, of that really, because it will inevitably make a significant difference, because they're normally exposed to so much, aren't they? That the lockdowns and everything. It's it's really interesting. A lot of parents come to us and they get their concern because their child won't interact, or interacts in a way that's perhaps, it could be slightly aggressive, or things like turn taking and that kind of thing. What kind of things and parents do, and when would it be, when would they need sort of extra support with that?
Yeah, I think, Leanne, from a speech language therapy point of view, I think it's probably, if the child is in nursery, for the parent to kind of meet with the nursery, meet with the key worker that knows that child really well, and kind of discuss what's going well with the child and any areas of difficulties, to kind of really think, actually, is some of those behavioural difficulties because the child doesn't have a means to communicate? Have they got unclear speech? Have they because sometimes social communication difficulties are associated kind of with language, and actually it's not a kind of primary social communication difficulties. So I guess kind of teasing apart kind of what we think is kind of going on with the child, and kind of from that then obviously the nursery could do any referrals on, or if they want to kind of discuss if they're not sure about the next steps, they could liaise with the SEND advisors. So that's the team that kind of go into nurseries to support nurseries with those kind of decisions, and additional funding that they could get in place for the children as well. And again, the early years resource pack would be a really helpful thing for them to do. So the first part of the resource pack has kind of a flowchart section for things like play and social communication. So it may say, if your child is having difficulties with turn taking and sharing, and then it will refer you on to particular advice sheets in the advice pack. So and again, that would just provide lots of activity ideas around turn taking, but also if that discussion with the nursery and parents has kind of brought up other areas of concern, maybe their understanding of language or their use of language, then the early years resource pack could be used to support those areas as well.
Sally?
Something I was going to say is that although I love the early years resource pack because it is our brain on a page, okay, we're not keeping anything from anyone, all right? There's not going to be some secret thing we say when you we've put as much information down as we possibly can, but I also get that on a day-to-day basis it can be a bit dry. We look at websites all the time, we look at screens all the time in our jobs, and we really don't want to be looking at screens, but I'm going to give you another screen to look at, another web page. And what I love about this is that it brings it to life. So there's one that I really love called Tiny Happy People that I think we're all promoting, aren't we? When I qualified as a speech therapist many years ago, we never used the internet. And so to have videos showing positively of just little activities that you can do with your child, because it doesn't really matter what you do with your child, you can support with social communication, you can support with language, and it doesn't have to be a special little activity with a speech therapist at a table, and that's what I love.
No, it's more about that time together, isn't it? It's more about that time together.
I love about the website. I was just looking at it now because every time I look at it, there's something else. I'm like, and one of them was like, what activity could I do with my child? Because we all get a bit bored, don't we? With I think we've got to do the puzzle, or we've got to look at the book, and so there's this lovely little tool on there that says, am I inside? Am I outside? Does my child like crafty stuff? Do they like not sensory? And they just come up with something really easy, like, just get some bottles together. And I thought, brilliant. Just gives you a little bit of an idea, because a lot of what we say is the same thing: turn taking, copy, wait, observe, wait, listen, start, stop. We do all those things, but it's trying to keep it sort of a variety of activities to do that with. So you're practicing the same skill. And we're just whizzing through that because this is really tricky to cover this subject. Not to
absolutely.
In 1 hour.
Absolutely.
There's so much families can do.
I think sometimes parental anxiety is the concern, isn't it? And actually time spent with your child. And I know people say, they're just playing, but actually that play is so significantly important So it's having just being there and doing that play is key, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what we'll do is we'll pop that website into the along with this recording so that families can have a look at that, because it sounds absolutely brilliant. And I think you're right. I think sometimes parents are anxious and they do worry that, you know, that their child's not doing this by a certain time, and you know, all the things that come with, you know, being a parent is make things really tricky. So having things like that, just to be able to say, it's okay, let's, you know, just, you know, go away and just do some of these fun activities and enjoy the time together it's just invaluable, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think often as a parent you feel guilty about everything, don't you? Guilt about what you do or what you don't do, but it is about time spent.
Yeah, and it's kind of actually when you're kind to yourself, actually it removes that anxiety, and it makes the whole experience better anyway, doesn't it? So yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. So I'm just thinking, obviously it's related, but in terms of behaviour, so some of the questions that we've had on behaviour, they probably relate quite closely to social communication, really. But in terms of support, what support and services is probably quite similar, really, are there to support families encountering behaviour problems? So some of our families have said, you know, things like not being able to sit still or concentrate for long periods, and some of them have kind of said, well, you know, when they're at nursery, you've got all the children are sort of sitting down listening to a story, and then you've got your child running around like just full of energy. And actually, as a parent of a child who's autistic and also has ADHD, I remember those days very, very well, because I was always I was a nursery manager, and I used to bring my eldest daughter with me to work, and I used to put it down to the fact that she was just at work with me, so that's why. But honestly, she was like a whirlwind. If the children were inside, she'd be outside.
Want to be outside,
Out there, and just, you know, I mean, she was brilliant. She was brilliant fun, and everyone, you know, everyone loved her. But it was quite stressful, because it was that that she wasn't conforming to the sort of the norms of what all the other children were doing. And we do hear from families quite often that they have these difficulties. So what kind of advice could you give in those, you know, situations to families in how best to sort of support them and manage that?
I think again, in the first instance, if you're that parent worried about your child and you haven't got any other professionals involved yet, then it's worth contacting health visitors or the school nurse team if they're over 5. And just ask for some support and advice, and perhaps an assessment. You know, getting together face to face and having a chat about it is really, really good in the first instance. And also, if they're at nursery or school, then communicating between and having, you know, communicating all the time between them and finding out what is that child doing, and then you can compare what they're doing to home and school or nursery, and then we can then think about, I mean, if it's just a matter of giving some support with some strategies to manage behaviour, then we can help with that. But then if we feel that it's sort of a little bit out of our remit, then we would then refer on to speech and language or for a multidisciplinary assessment or something like that, and then let them have a look and then go from there. So I think if you're that parent sitting at home that you haven't got anyone else involved except school, nursery and yourself, then give us a call and we'll have a chat about it and then go from there.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And from a speech and language point of view, is there anything that you can suggest that might benefit? You know, I'm just thinking of that sort of particular example of the child sort of being almost quite distant to the others and just, you know, not being able to join the group, and actually quite often finding it really difficult to be, I guess, within the group as well. And I suppose because that has an impact on interaction. So is there anything you could suggest from your side?
Yeah, so Leanne, I think as speech and language therapists, we don't just think about children's kind of talking or their understanding of language. It is that social interaction and that kind of attention and listening side of things as well. So yeah, I think it would be kind of, again, getting a little bit more information in terms of what are the primary kind of needs. Is it more around the kind of attention and listening? Is the child interested in the other children, or actually do they not really show any interest in kind of engaging with the other children at all, and then kind of tailoring the support to that. So things for attention and listening, maybe depending on the child and how they're presenting, little kind of ready steady go games, something kind of like bucket time, so really high attention toys that they're sitting and engaging with and just learning to sort of jointly attend to activities. So something that's adult led but is really highly motivating, so they just start to attend to adult-led activities. Thinking about the kind of use of visuals, so maybe with sitting on the carpet, would they respond to having a big sand timer, so a kind of big chunky colour sand timer, and they kind of learn maybe with a now and next board, which is just a little visual that says first carpet time, next something that's motivating, bubbles or whatever it may be. So yeah, thinking about the use of kind of visuals, now and next board, sand timers, that kind of thing. There's so many different strategies, but it really kind of depends on the nature of the child's difficulties.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've got anything to add there.
Yeah, no, that's what they all sound really, really useful. And I know the now and next board I know can be really, really effective, because it's that visual sign of we're going to do this now, but then you can do that afterwards, and it can be really, really effective for lots and lots of families. No, brilliant. And so we also hear from families quite often so it's usually when their child starts in an education setting, so usually a nursery, and they just aren't able to settle, and they just cry, and they're just really just very unsettled, and just really, and the parents are just sort of, is it because they're unhappy there, that everything seems to be done to make them feel happy and secure, but they just, for whatever reason, just can't settle. Is there anything that you could suggest to support or anything that they could do in those situations?
I mean, from a C's point of view, we see this a lot, again, around, some of it's around that anxiety of the parent and how that feeds into how that child is feeling. But it's, from a Portage point of view, it's breaking that down into small steps. So is there anything that that child could take in a little rucksack or something, that they have, say, a picture of home, or they know, like we talked about, Lucy talked about visuals, or an object clue from home, just so that they know that mum or dad is coming back, and the session might be, say, two little activities, and then mum or dad will come back. It's knowing what will happen now and what's going to happen next. It's around that anxiety of all the family, really. So I would say it's a chance to, maybe for the nursery and parents, to sit together and decide, well, how could we make this easier for this little one, or breaking even the session down. I know some of our little ones don't necessarily stay or they're not ready to stay for that collective time when everyone's together, because it might be, we've spoken briefly about it, developmentally they might not be ready to sit next to another child, or sensory perception might be a little bit delayed, and they're struggling with that close proximity of being with everybody. So it's really communicating and talking that through with the professionals in the setting, I would probably advise, and the family. And say, if they have support from another service, everyone coming together and just look, how can we problem solve this for both mum, dad, and the little one. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant! That's brilliant advice. I think it's so difficult, because I as a parent of a child who also didn't settle, it's so emotionally draining, I think, and it's you're trying.
I mean, that time is emotional anyway, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, yeah. And you kind of feel like, especially for parents who have to perhaps go back to work after maternity leave, and they've got all those sort of feelings of guilt and everything like that, and then they sort of find the perfect setting, and it all sounds great, and then their child just will not settle, and it's really, really it's difficult. So those suggestions are really, I love the idea of them bringing in something from home and things like that.
I just think also we need to need to look at where each child is developmentally rather than chronologically, because often they're not necessarily functioning and the expectations need to be looked at together of that child, where they are developmentally, if there's social communication needs, especially, and language delay needs. So yeah, they might be at a different, so you've almost got to pitch everything at the right level. Yeah.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think especially when they're so little, there can be such differences, can't there? Because, you know, they do mature at different
and it's also getting that, you know, we know that they've got to get that start right, because it then affects later as well, doesn't it? So
no, this is so useful, and I know it'd be invaluable for our families, because it's just, you know, these questions come up all the time, and it's just, you know, little suggestions like bringing something into nursery, that's so easy, and, you know, could potentially make such a big difference. So it's
I mean, that could be a toy from home, or it could be a picture if the child's ready to have a little photo book with the plastic sheets where you can pop maybe mum and dad's picture in, and you can keep, look, mum's coming back, you know, mum's coming back at this time. So it's looking at using visuals around that as well, because I think that kind of makes it more concrete and augments those words, doesn't it? Which is
absolutely, definitely. So, and we also get lots of questions in, and they say, well, you know, my child just will not listen, and they will just refuse to do everything that they're asked to do. And, you know, when they are asked to do something, if the adult insists on it, they will then just lose it, and they'll be hitting, kicking, spitting, you know, all those kind of behaviours. What can parents do in these situations? Because I know we get a lot of parents say, well, I just don't know, I just don't do whatever I ask them, you know, stop whatever it is they're asking them to do. You know, some of them have been told various sort of strategies like time out and that kind of thing. And I know, of course, it's very individual to the child, but if it was a kind of a consistent problem, and this was happening perhaps at home, at nursery, what kind of things would you suggest that parents do? I'd like to go.
But I kind of feel like what's quite tricky is when you've got a tantrum. We're all going to struggle with
absolutely
a tantrum. You know, it's never going to be a do this and suddenly it's going to stop. Right? It's a challenge for everybody, and it happens to everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So something which I felt like I wanted to mention, and we do this a lot as therapists, is be really clear about the praise that we're giving our children, and you can see the look on their faces sometimes when you're, you know, they're doing something maybe they shouldn't, but you're noticing the thing that they're doing quite well, and you comment on that bit, and it's tricky because they're still very young, but you can still sort of like give them the thumbs up and the woo, look at you sitting there, nice looking at the book, or whatever it may be, or oh, you're so kind, or just something that's focusing on the positives, just to distract them, because I think we can all get into that vicious circle, and you know, as a parent, it's so hard on a day-to-day basis just living life, and your child knows how to push your buttons and challenge you at the best times, and we all know we're meant to remain calm and ignore the bad behavior, and but I kind of wanted to sort of, you know, we keep talking about breaking it down. And I know, you know, the thing is that children will have tantrums, especially if they're tired, and they've got an audience. But I feel that, you know, and we could talk about social stories, but I think that's more sort of maybe for older children, but that's when, you know, we're using pictures to say, you know, what might be happening next, to help them see something a bit more concrete, or maybe having a toy just to distract them. There's so many strategies, it's really difficult to come up with one, isn't it? But I felt like I wanted to talk about the specific praise and how we use it so much, and it's something that people don't realize is so powerful.
It's so true, actually. It's so true, isn't it? You know, a child's little face, like, you're right, when they get that recognition of, you did the really good job there, is just brilliant, isn't it? And actually, you're so right, because you get sometimes when you're having these constant situations where your child is just being so defiant and just everything you do, it kind of clouds everything, doesn't it? And then you can't see the positives. And I've been in that situation myself, and sometimes I just have to take myself off and just take some deep breaths and think, you know what, we need to bring this back, and we need to just really, you know, think about the positives. And, you know, because when you do, the child begins to see what, you know, the benefits of being positive, you know, that positive behavior. So no, that's really, really good, because it can get so forgotten.
I'm glad you said about, I'm glad you said, Leanne, about taking yourself out as well, because I think parents,
that's really important.
That time out yourself.
Absolutely.
I've certainly sat in a room, you know, you've got a couple or, you know, family members, and they just say they feel like they're saying no all day, and they feel like they're being cross all day, and it grinds you down, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I know it's not always possible, but, you know, if there are people to help, then having that respite yourself as a parent, just to give you then the energy when you go back in to be positive and feel like you're being positive. But also consistency.
Yes.
And consistency, because you'll have grandparents doing one thing,
nursery
doing another, and so it's about talking to all those parties again and making sure that you're all being consistent.
Yes. And I'd agree, it's really important to step back and almost analyse, because behaviour is communication, and you can look at that positively in itself, is that they're trying to tell you something, even if they're doing it in a frantic tantrum way. But actually, let's step back and think, right, how am I reacting to the behaviour, or am I looking at what's going on underneath here? You know, is it a sensory thing? What's making them cross? What's the antecedent that's happening just before? And it's kind of encouraging parents to step back. Oh, that's why he's doing what he's doing. You know, maybe if I tweak the environment or change the situation just a little bit, could I make it better for them, that they don't react so drastically? And also, it's, you know, we've again got to look at development of when they're doing this, whether that's, you know, wanting to get something they want and they can't have it. You know, what is it about that they're trying to communicate? And I think that's important for, but obviously not in the heat of the moment.
No.
But maybe having some encouragement of knowing how to do that, to step back and look at underneath an iceberg, if you like, it, rather than reacting to what's actually happening in the room. But I know that's difficult in the situation. I'm a parent of 3, so I know exactly what it's like in the heat of the moment.
I think kind of if parents are finding it difficult to kind of do some of that kind of analysing almost what is happening as the trigger on their own, it is about reaching out either to kind of professionals that they're you know, already known to, or to the local, do you know what I mean, family centre, and contacting them and seeing. I know, again, this is just kind of locally with Guildford, but you can ring the family centre and have a kind of half an hour one-to-one discussion around any area of your child's development that you're kind of concerned about. And again, they can provide some support. They've got outreach workers that work with them, or they can potentially signpost you on. They do courses like Parenting Puzzle, they do a nurturing programme as well at the moment, so there may well be things at kind of local family centres that can support parents as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, it's so interesting, and sometimes you're right, it's just actually talking it through with somebody. And I mean, I do it all the time with my daughter, when, you know, she's older but still has very complex behaviour needs. But sometimes just talking it through with somebody else, and you're just like, oh yeah, actually, that's because that's happening tomorrow, and you know, but you know, and it's like that constant thing. But once you realise, you can then adapt how you behave as a parent to, you know, sort of suit the situation. So it's not always easy, but I think it is so important just to sort of take a step back. And I always just try and breathe. Deep breaths. I'm ready for the next stage.
Count to 10 and back again, I always say. You know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just looking, we've covered so much. I'm just so pleased. I wasn't sure how much we were going to get through. Now, one of the other questions we get, and I sort of jumped back a bit, sorry, I missed this one, but we have some parents who come to us and say, you know, my sort of 4 or 5-year-old is really struggling to understand what instructions and what's being asked of them. So, you know, things like a bit asked being put your coat on, and they just completely seem oblivious to what is being asked of them. And parents quite often say to us, but I think they do understand, because they know what a coat is and they know everything else, but they seem to not be able to respond so well to instructions. So I don't know if there's anything that you could sort of suggest to help, you know, them with that, and sort of make that time a bit easier, or reword it in a certain way, or something.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose from a speech and language therapy point of view, it is just trying to work out actually, do we need to explore whether their understanding of language is actually an area of concern? I think sometimes children are very good at picking up kind of gestural prompts and other clues that we give them to be able to follow instructions. So there may actually be an underlying kind of receptive language, so them understanding language, you know, there may be a difficulty there. So maybe again liaising with kind of nursery or school, and actually kind of seeing whether nursery or school have any concerns around their understanding of language or any other area of their development. I guess also sometimes, Leanne, if children are parents feel their child is able to follow the instructions, it may just be more of a compliance issue. So there may be, it's kind of thinking about actually what's your kind of behaviour management for that child. And again, coming back to that kind of specific praise and positive kind of reinforcement as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, I totally agree. And I think sometimes, parents I think some children need more time to process things as well. And I think sometimes, I know from my own, you know, sometimes I rush things and I say, okay, you do this, and this. And she's probably got the first word because my daughter takes a lot longer to process things. And I forget myself all the time that I need to give her that extra time. And I think sometimes parents will give instructions, but then not give them time to process it. And it probably just gets lost in there. That's really, really useful, just sort of thinking about time and whether and actually, like you say, if they're understanding what it is that they're being asked to do, and really understanding it as well. No, that's so interesting. It's just I've absolutely loved. I think we've covered all the questions. You know, I've really loved talking to all of you. I've learned so much. I thought I knew quite a lot about early years, but I've learned so much from you all just in this session. So thank you. I think it's going to be absolutely.
Well, it's really good to meet together. Actually, it's quite a good
isn't it?
way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, this was what we kind of set out, that we wanted to do a sort of group.
Yes, brilliant idea.
Because then you can see it from all the different perspectives. So
count me in next time. It's great.
Oh, fantastic. You're going to regret saying that.
Yeah, maybe I am. Yeah.
I think the thing is, though, is that, you know, usually we have a child or a situation or a sort of concern in front of us, but we're able to give much more specific support and advice. And I have actually found this quite tricky myself, because we could answer it in so many different ways.
Yeah, and you do need to know the child almost, don't you?
And I just think, have we been useful, or have we just been so generic? So
I think it's been really useful, and I think families watching it will get those suggestions and those ideas, and they'll know, you know, where to go if they need extra support, and you know, that kind of thing. So absolutely, I think it's been absolutely really valuable. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, and yes, hopefully we'll get to do it again soon.